The studio lights of American Spotlight blazed with an almost surreal intensity, casting long shadows across the stage like the opening scene of a high-stakes thriller. The air was thick, not just with the usual pre-show anticipation, but with something far heavier, far more volatile. It was the kind of tension that crackles before a storm, where every whispered word, every exchanged glance, feels like a spark that could ignite an explosion. The audience, a sea of wide eyes and raised phones, sat perfectly still, their collective breath held as if they were witnesses to history in the making. At the center of it all stood two figures who had dominated headlines for weeks, now facing often what was promised to be the most explosive confrontation in political media history. On one side, Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary ever, a woman whose meteoric rise had been built on her unshakable poise and lethal, rhetorical precision. She stood like a warrior stepping onto the battlefield, her steely gaze locked onto her opponent, her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile that promised devastation. Across from her, Trevor Noah, the global comedy icon, the man who had turned satire into a weapon capable of humbling presidents, sat with his usual relaxed posture. But there was something different tonight. His trademark grin was there, but it was tighter, more calculated, as if he sensed the ground shifting beneath him. Then, without warning, Leavitt struck. Leaning into the microphone, her voice, calm, measured but sharp as a scalpel, cut through the silence. "Trevor, you've spent years calling yourself a truth-teller. But what if America found out you've been paid to lie?" The reaction was instantaneous. The audience erupted, gasps, shouts, scattered applause, a cacophony of shock and disbelief. Noah's smirk faltered for just a fraction of a second before he recovered, but the damage was done. The question hung in the air like a guillotine's blade. Was this a bluff? Or was Karoline Leavitt about to detonate a bomb that would rewrite the rules of media forever? The night the laughter died, when Karoline Leavitt pulled back the curtain on Trevor Noah. The studio had never felt more like a coliseum. The energy was electric, a living thing that pulsed through the room, setting every nerve on edge. This wasn't just another talk show segment. This was a clash of ideologies, a battle for narrative control, and both sides knew the stakes were existential. Karoline Leavitt, dressed in a sleek power-red blazer that seemed to scream confidence, stood with the posture of a prosecutor who already knew she'd won. Across from her, Trevor Noah, usually the master of diffusing tension with a well-timed joke, looked uncharacteristically tense, his fingers tapping a restless rhythm against the armrest of his chair. The host, Jack Harper, a veteran journalist, with a knack for stoking drama without ever appearing partisan, barely needed to intervene. The moment Leavitt opened her mouth, the internet had already begun to implode. "You've built your entire career on the idea that you're just a comedian, just a guy telling jokes," Leavitt began, her voice dripping with quiet venom. "But what if I told America that your jokes weren't just jokes? What if I told them your punchlines were bought and paid for?" She held up a thick manila folder, its contents ominously unknown, and the camera zoomed in so close that the rustle of paper could be heard across the nation. Noah's expression flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. The audience, sensing blood in the water, erupted into chaos. Some cheered, some booed, and a few simply sat in stunned silence, their phones recording every second. Leavitt didn't wait for permission. She flipped open the folder with the precision of a surgeon making the first incision. "Let's talk numbers, Trevor. $2.5 million. That's how much a San Francisco-based nonprofit, one funded by some of the most notorious anti-Trump billionaires in the country, funneled into your show over 3 years." She paused, letting the number sink in. "And here's the kicker. It wasn't just for laughs. It was for strategy. Emails from your producers discussing how to ramp up anti-Trump content. Contracts specifying politically driven segments." She held up a sheet of paper, her eyes never leaving Noah's. "This isn't comedy, Trevor. This is propaganda." Noah's response was swift, But for the first time in his career, it lacked its usual effortless charm. "Karoline, if you're going to accuse me of being a paid shill, you'd better have more than a bunch of papers you printed an hour ago," he shot back, his voice tinged with a tension no joke could mask. But Leavitt was already ahead of him. With a slow, deliberate smile, she turned to the host. "Jack, should we play the video?" The room went dead silent. Noah's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. What video? Behind the scenes, producers were in a frenzy. Social media had already exploded. Noah Exposed was climbing the trending charts at breakneck speed. Memes were flooding TikTok, and political commentators on both sides were declaring victory before the final blow had even been struck. Leavitt had turned a simple talk show into a courtroom, and Noah was suddenly on trial. Then came the moment that would be replayed, dissected, and debated for months. The massive screen behind them flickered to life, revealing grainy but unmistakable footage, a behind-the-scenes clip from The Daily Show. Noah's voice, clear and unedited, rang out. "We need to hit Trump harder. The numbers drop when we don't. Ratings depend on it." The audience gasped as one. Noah was on his feet before the clip even finished, his chair screeching against the floor. "That's edited. That's not the full context," he protested. But the damage was irreversible. Leavitt didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her smirk said everything. Checkmate. For the first time in his career, Trevor Noah had no punchline, no witty comeback. Instead, he did the unthinkable. He turned and walked off the set. The studio erupted. Leavitt leaned back in her chair, the picture of calm triumph. The headlines wrote themselves before the credits even rolled. "Comedy's king dethroned, Karoline. Leavitt just changed the game forever." But as the dust settled and the world scrambled to process what had just happened, one question lingered like a ghost in the room. Had America just witnessed a takedown, or the greatest media manipulation of all time? In the hours that followed, the fallout was seismic. Fox News wasted no time declaring Leavitt the victor, their chirons blaring. "Leavitt slays the liberal lion. How one woman exposed the media's biggest fraud." Conservative pundits hailed her as a modern-day David who had toppled Goliath with nothing but facts and nerve. Meanwhile, CNN and MSNBC spun the narrative in the opposite direction, framing Noah's exit as an act of principled defiance. "Noah refuses to play dirty. Leavitt's gotcha moment backfires," one headline read. Twitter became a digital war zone, with hashtags like "Stand with Trevor" and "Leavitt Lies" battling for dominance. Noah himself remained conspicuously silent on social media, but sources close to him claimed he was in emergency meetings with lawyers, weighing defamation lawsuits and planning his next move. His supporters, however, needed no official statement. They flooded the internet with clips of his past monologues, arguing that even if some funding was politically aligned, his critiques of Trump had always been rooted in verifiable facts. 3,200. Tweets attacking the media. 12 times calling COVID a hoax, they chanted, as if repetition could erase the night's damage. Leavitt, meanwhile, was riding a wave of newfound fame. Her inbox overflowed with interview requests, speaking engagements, and even whispers of a future political run. She had accomplished what no Republican strategist had managed in years. She had made satire look sinister, had turned jokes into evidence of conspiracy. But beneath the surface of her triumph, a darker question loomed. Had she exposed a genuine scandal, or had she simply weaponized the public's distrust of media to reframe reality itself? If a comedian's jokes are funded by political money, does that make them propaganda? Or is all comedy inherently biased? Think about it. Every late-night host, every satirical news show, every meme that goes viral, they all come from somewhere. They all have a perspective. But where do we draw the line between opinion and manipulation? Between holding power accountable and being a pawn in someone else's game? Drop your thoughts below. Do you think Trevor Noah was exposed? Or was he set up? Was Karoline Leavitt a truth-teller or a master manipulator? And most importantly, does it even matter anymore in a world where perception is everything? Don't forget to subscribe. The next episode of American Spotlight won't just break the internet, it might just break reality.